Turmeric can put you deeper into a fast. It can get you into a more fasted state in less amount of time because it can put you in a deficit at a cellular level. And the Japanese have proven this in Okinawa. Today we're talking about how interesting science shows that utilizing turmeric during a fast puts you into more of an AMPK activated mode. Now, in layman human terms, what that means is it flips the metabolic switch over to fasting mode much easier and much faster, meaning your body can start utilizing stored energy for fuel much easier and faster. Now, the reason that I referenced the Japanese earlier is there was an interesting study that took a look at the Okinawa region of Japan, which is notorious for longevity and for really being healthy. Well, they found that generally speaking, this region lived their lives in a mild caloric deficit. Okay, they were living in a 10 to 15% caloric deficit all the time, which means that they were somewhat in a fasted state. Now, when I say that, I mean their body, as far as energy sensing was concerned, sensed that they were in a deficit. So it triggered similar pathways to what would be triggered when we're fasting. But they also noticed that they consumed a lot of foods that were fasting mimicking, like turmeric. Turmeric can mimic a fast because it helps activate AMPK, the same energy switch that gets activated with fasting. I do want to make sure you hit that red subscribe button, and then please do hit that bell icon so you never ever miss a beat. After this video, also highly recommend, if you're interested in some turmeric, check out Peak Tea Crystals Fermented Electric Turmeric. This is a really cool company that specializes in a lot of fasting teas, and they've created this specifically for fasting because they know about the science that I'm going to talk about in this video. So it's really cool, mixes easily with water, super convenient to use when you're fasting. But Peak Tea's electric turmeric is a little bit different. You see, it's fermented instead of having to use black pepper. The fermentation process allows for maximum absorption into the body because it's improving that bioavailability and also the cellular absorption. But the cool thing is, it's made from Okinawan turmeric, and then it's blended according to traditional Ayurveda. That means they're blending it with cinnamon and ginger root to help enhance the absorption and some of the potential health benefits. So when it comes down to fasting, or when it comes down to just sipping on something, Peak Tea has some really cool products, and this electric turmeric is just one of them. They are super awesome. They're the only tea that are designed for health benefits. They utilize a crystallization technology that allows the concentrated antioxidants, so it could be very, very powerful. Anyhow, highly recommend that you check them out. So here's what happens in a nutshell. When your body senses that you're in a deficit, it upregulates this AMPK. Again, that's a switch that gets your body to start utilizing other fuel sources. Well, what happens, and was demonstrated in the journal Metabolism, when we consume curcumin, it activates the same switch, but via a slightly different pathway. You see, it elevates what is called cyclic adenosine monophosphate. Now, when cyclic adenosine monophosphate, or adenosine monophosphate in general, pools up in the body, that is one of the biggest pieces that can push that switch to the AMPK pathway on. So long story short, consuming curcumin elevates the CAMP, which puts you into a fasted state. Now, AMPK really is like the quintessential just pivot point of fasting. Once that AMPK is on, you are technically in a deficit and in a fasted state, for lack of a better term. Now, imagine that you could flip this switch harder. You see, it's not simple on-off. It actually is more like a dimmer switch, like a dial. The more that you activate AMPK, the deeper into a fast you get, the deeper the metabolic benefit, the more fatty acid utilization, the more overall fat burning, right? So if you combine fasting, which already flips the AMPK switch, along with turmeric, which also flips the AMPK switch, you're able to crank that dial to 11 and get your body to utilize its stored energy a lot better. But that's not where it stops. It continues on past that. You see, let's talk specifically about curcumin's effect on weight loss outside of fasting, and it might paint a clear picture for us. You see, the European Review of Medical and Pharmacological Sciences published a study that looked at people that were struggling losing weight, okay? They were dieting for 30 days and they were losing less than 2% of their body weight, which signified that they were at a plateau or struggling. So what they did is they said, okay, we're going to give this group turmeric, curcumin, during their dietary intervention. Well, the results were insane. After 30 days, the average weight loss went from 1.88% to 4.91% by adding curcumin. But get this, the fat loss went from 0.7% skyrocketing over 8%. Okay, more than a 5 or 6x increase in their fat loss by adding curcumin. Now, that's not to say that curcumin is a miracle compound, but when someone is in a state where they're plateauing, they're already in a deficit. So what they need is something to put them deeper into a deficit without actually putting them in a deficit. Okay, so by adding the turmeric into the situation, the curcumin, they were able to signal to their body that they were in a deficit when they weren't in as much of a deficit. So think about how that collides with fasting. Okay, with fasting, the AMPK activation improves lipid transportation. It improves the shuttle bus that brings fat into the cell. It makes it more efficient and it creates more of them. It's called CD36 and CPT1. It's a really cool mechanism, but yes, it's widely known in the fasting research community that that happens. And it's attenuated by how much AMPK we have. Well, if we have more curcumin that is putting you deeper into that AMPK activation, you have a more potent reaction, a more potent effect of those lipid transporters, meaning they can grab more fat, utilize more fat, and ultimately get you a more desired outcome. So there's always this big argument that's out there that if it's got 3, 4, 5 calories, it's going to break a fast. By some standards, yes, but by more energy system and energy sensor pathways, no. It's actually going to yield you more benefit, at least as far as body composition is concerned. So I do recommend sipping on some turmeric. That's, again, if you want to check out the Peak Tea Crystals Electric Turmeric, highly, highly, highly recommend that one just because it's convenient and it's in really simple, easy, single-serve packets, and it's really clean. And I know and I trust Dr. Jason Fung very, very well, and this is what he's behind. So highly, highly recommend it. Special link down below if you want to check it out. But the science doesn't stop here. Keep going. Fat adaptation and mitochondrial biogenesis. What does that mean? Well, the more that your body gets used to fasting, the more that your cells get used to utilizing the fat. Okay? But that takes time. And what I mean by that is your mitochondria are only alive for so long. Okay? Then they have DNA and they give birth to new mitochondria. Well, that biogenesis is very, very important, that new mitochondria. And the new era or the new generation of mitochondria that are born are going to evolve to know how to utilize fats more. So if we can improve the rate of mitochondrial biogenesis, we can improve the speed at which your body gets used to utilizing fats. So there was a cool study that took a look at turmeric or curcumin combined with exercise. Exercise simulates, as far as AMPK goes, a similar process to fasting. So it's relevant. They found that when subjects consumed curcumin along with exercise, they had greater mitochondrial biogenesis than if they did not have the curcumin, meaning their bodies adapted to utilizing fats and different substrates much quicker than those that didn't add the curcumin. But now we have to talk about the fun stuff, autophagy, I want to touch on for a second. I kind of laugh at autophagy sometimes because sometimes in like the beginning fasting communities, autophagy is touted as like the biggest, coolest thing in the world. It's awesome, but I think there's a lot of other benefits that come outside of just autophagy. Autophagy is the cellular sort of recycling that occurs within your cells when you're fasting. Well, curcumin induces autophagy 2 different ways. You see, curcumin induces that AMPK activation like we talked about, and that inhibits what is called mTOR. And when mTOR is inhibited, autophagy starts. Plain, simple process. One thing leads to another. That's cool. Fasting and turmeric both enhance that the same way. But curcumin has been shown to induce autophagy in a completely different, independent manner. You see, it affects transcription factor EB. This induces autophagy separate and apart from fasting. So you could induce autophagy theoretically by consuming curcumin without fasting. But if you can consume curcumin during a fast, you potentially have 2 different directions in which you are impacting autophagy. That is pretty powerful if autophagy is what you're after. If you're trying to sort of reset your body and get yourself back to a cleaner baseline, then that could just be something that works for you. Now, I want to make sure that I describe something entirely here. You don't have to add turmeric to your fast. Just because I say that it's super effective and it has its role, it doesn't mean that I do it every day. I don't use turmeric every time I fast. But if you're trying to spice things up and trying to shock your body a little bit, it's probably worth a shot given all the scientific literature that's out there. And it never hurts to experiment on yourself. I like to fast with just water many, many times. But I also like to throw a wrench in things and consume apple cider vinegar, or consume things like turmeric, or consume little bits of green tea here and there, just to spice things up and to trigger different activation of different cellular processes. You can experiment on yourself. It's okay. You're allowed. See you tomorrow.